Well, hello everyone. My name is Cody Armour. I'm the executive director here at Geeks Under Grace. I've had that position for about 4 years now, and I've been with the ministry for almost a decade. Beyond that, I've also been volunteering in other capacities for over 15 years, I believe. So volunteering, serving is really, really important to me. Another thing that's really important to me, for those who don't know, is video games. Love video games. I've been playing video games for the longest time, since I was almost a baby. I think 2 years old was when I had my first console. One of my memories with video games, though, is my favorite one, Super Mario Bros. 3. Me and my little brother would play that for hours and hours for years, really. Super Mario Bros. 3, for those who don't know, you can probably play it on the Nintendo Switch now. It's had so many different iterations. I actually had it on the original Nintendo, and then the one that we played a lot was on the Super Nintendo, Super Mario All-Stars, and then you put that cartridge in, you play Super Mario Bros. 3. You could save the file. It was amazing. But the problem that we kept running into was that we always had to be player one, both of us. We had two controllers. We could have played Mario and Luigi, but we had to be Mario always. And so what was happening with that is I would beat a level, and then my little brother would lose. And that's how we switched off, was either you beat the level or you lost a life, and then we would switch the controller, hand the controller over. And so beat a level, lose a level, life. Beat a level, lose life, and then we get game over, and we would start over. And we almost never ever beat more than World 1 because we just kept losing. And I won't say that I was amazing at it at first either, but I was quite a bit better than my little brother when we were 6, 7 years old, however old we were with this. And I'd like to say that, it was right away I figured out that, if I was player 2, then everything would work out. But I'm pretty selfish, and it took a little while to realize that, hey, maybe if we had, set this game up for two-player the way that it's built, maybe we'll do okay. The problem with that was, I didn't want to be Luigi. I don't want to be the second player. I could be first player and he could be second player, and we would have been fine, but he didn't want to. So we just both continued losing until I finally gave in and said, fine, you can be Mario. I'll be Luigi, and we'll see how it goes. So for those who don't know how this game works, you beat a level, there's a world map, and on the world map, if Mario wins, then he gets a little M. If Luigi wins, he gets a little L on the levels. And so when someone gets game over, then the exact same thing happens where, you have to start all over, but the other player, say Mario got game over, then Mario's levels are the only ones that change back. Luigi doesn't have to start all the way over as well. Luigi's levels are still there, and I could go back as Luigi and beat the levels that my little brother couldn't beat if I absolutely needed to. Because of this, we got a little bit farther in the game, and one of the things that was really cool to me too was because I wasn't playing the same 4 levels over and over, my little brother was actually able to watch me play a little bit more, and he was able to get better at the game as well. And eventually, we did beat Super Mario Bros. 3 together. It's World 8, and I'll say this, he helped me on a lot of stuff. There were things that I just wasn't good at that he was. And eventually, we beat Bowser's castle, or ship. I can't remember now that I'm saying that out loud. They're airships in Super Mario Bros. 3. And we were able to beat the game because one of us took a step back and said, okay, you be player 1, and I will be player 2, and I will be your right hand. So, I say all that to say, sometimes we need to be player 2. Sometimes we need to take a step back and let someone else take the lead. And sometimes when we do that, it'll actually take us farther than if we both tried for first. So there's a lot of biblical stories that are kind of like this. And, you've probably heard, if you're, I almost quoted Talladega Nights, if you're not first, you're last, which it's backwards. If you're last, you're first is what the Bible says. The last shall be first and the first shall be last. And there's a lot of different illustrations with that. The first one in the Bible, I believe, is Joseph in Genesis. We're going to go there because I think that is one of the best ones. Joseph, not Mary and Joseph, not that Joseph. We're going way back. Genesis, the first book in the Bible, for those who don't know. And those who didn't grow up in the church, you're not going to know the story, but the ones that did will know Joseph. He's the guy with the coat of many colors. So, he had a coat of many colors. His brothers get jealous. Yeah, let's start from the beginning. So, it's in Genesis, I believe it's chapter 34 is where it starts. We're not going to read the entire thing because it's kind of a long story. We're only going to hit a single part, but to kind of recap everything really quickly, you have Joseph. Joseph is one of many brothers, and his father loves him. He is definitely the favorite. He is definitely his father's kind of right hand in a lot of ways. And you'll notice in the story too, Joseph is just an expert at being player 2. So really to his brothers, they see him as player 1. Right? They can't stand the guy. He is always talking poorly about them, just not because he's trying to get them in trouble, but they're just doing poorly. And so he's kind of ratting them out. And he is showing all the favoritism because he's really good at his job and they're not that great at their job. And so they plot to just straight up kill him. They're thinking about killing him. They find this pit and they think about throwing him in the pit, killing him there, and then they'd have to hide the body. And one of them basically says, that sounds like a lot of work. Hey, there's some Egyptians coming. Let's just sell him to slavery. And so they do that. They send Joseph to Egypt, sell him for money, and then they go back and they tell us about, they take this coat of many colors, they dip it in some blood and say, oh no, man, your son's dead. That's too bad. We tried, kind of. And so his father's really upset about this, obviously. But Joseph is not dead. He's in Egypt, sold to a man named Potiphar. And you'll see a theme here. Joseph, really good at his job, really good at just doing the right things, becomes Potiphar's favorite. And Potiphar, he basically becomes right hand to Potiphar. He serves him the best that he can, and in doing so, lives way better than he did when he was living with his father. I think that's an interesting thing. In each one of these, he kind of climbs a ladder in a lot of ways. So, Joseph is doing everything right. Potiphar loves him. The problem is, Potiphar's wife, also really fond of him, tries sleeping with him. And Joseph, being the good guy that he is, says no. And she gets embarrassed and mad about the fact that he said no. And so she rips his clothes off and then takes it to the guard. And they're like, look, he tried sleeping with me. I'm horrified. And Joseph gets sent to prison. So the moral of the story is, if you try to do the right thing, you'll go to prison. No, that's not the moral of the story. But that's kind of where he ends up. Is he ends up in prison. Potiphar is very upset with him. Why are you trying to sleep with my wife? He's like, I'm not. And he goes, I believe my wife over you. Sorry, you're just a slave. You're doing great, but wife comes first. Totally understandable. And so he's wrongly accused, and he's in prison. And he does everything right in prison and becomes kind of their right hand. He's not free by any means. He's still a prisoner, but he basically runs the prison for them. And he interprets some dreams. There's a lot to this Bible passage. He interprets some dreams. Doesn't really go his way either. Finally, Pharaoh catches wind. Pharaoh has some dreams. Says, hey, bring that Joseph guy that's basically running the prison to me. I want to talk to him about these dreams that I'm having. And Joseph interprets the dreams. And the Pharaoh, so like king of Egypt, the Pharaoh of Egypt, is like, wow, you are really wise. I think that you should be in charge of Egypt. And I'll be on the throne. I'm still the Pharaoh, but you're going to be all right hand man. You're going to do all the decision making. You're basically leading Egypt for me and being my right hand. You're serving me in probably the highest capacity that anybody could. in the interpretation of those dreams and things, you find out that there's going to be 7 years of really good life for Joseph and the rest of Egypt, and there's going to be 7 years of famine. And Joseph, through his serving, basically takes Egypt, and they are smart with their resources when they're in a surplus, and then they are wise in how they handle the famine itself. And that is all Joseph serving in a prisoner slave position. And he's not number one. He's player 2. So I want to get to Genesis 45, 8 through 11, and kind of go, we're going to stop there. I'm going to read this passage. Like I said, I encourage you to read the entire story. The entire story is really good. Genesis 45, 8 through 11. Now, therefore, it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, Lord of all of his household, ruler over the land of Egypt. Hurry and go to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not delay, for you shall live in the land of Goshen. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And you shall be near me, and you and your children, and your grandchildren, and your flocks, and your herds, and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine left, and you and your household, and all that you have would be impoverished. So, he's saying that to his brothers that have just found out that it's him. He's not dead, and he's actually ruling over them. That's something that he had dreamed about when he was younger, and told them there's a reason they weren't fond of him. He said, you went out to kill me, but don't worry, it's fine. It wasn't you, it was God. God had a plan. His plan was for me to be player 2 in the best way possible, because I'm really, really good at it. I think what's really interesting about this and the way that God uses people is that it wasn't the Pharaoh, it wasn't Potiphar, it wasn't the father that did all of these great, amazing things. It was the second guy. It was the guy serving. It was the guy in the background. So if it weren't for the Bible, that story wouldn't be about Joseph. It would be about the Pharaoh. It would be his story of all the great things that he did, even though it was a second in command. I want to talk about serving a little bit. There's a few different ways that serving benefits everyone. The first point that I want to make is kind of a strange one, and that is that serving serves you. And if you're thinking, Cody, I don't think that's where your heart should be when you're serving people, is how can it benefit you? You're right, but we do live in a society that I think often wants to know what's in it for them. And just the way that serving is set up, there are some answers for that. Here, first of all, I want to point out why I think that serving on a surface level benefits you if you're the one server. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it's, what's the verse? Let me look it up here. It's a dopamine hit, right? It makes you feel good when you serve people. The Bible says in Isaiah 64:6, and all our righteous deeds are like a filthy garment to the Lord. Basically, like, even your selfless deeds are still selfish because they make you feel good. But that's not what I mean when I'm saying that serving serves you. There are some practical ways that this is actually going to be benefiting you if you decide to play player 2, if you decide to serve others. And they're good things. I mean, these are beneficial, godly things that you can use. The first one is skills. It's the skills that you learn doing something that you aren't used to doing or that you wouldn't be doing otherwise. This entire conference, this level up event, wouldn't have happened if someone wasn't serving. If I hadn't been serving for the last 10 years, I would have no idea how to have done any of this. For those who don't know, I did a lot of the planning. I did a lot of the graphic design for this. Don't mean to brag, humble brag a little bit. But legitimately, everything, all the photoshopping that I did and all the After Effects stuff that I did, writing this, I'd have no idea how to do that if it wasn't for Geeks Under Grace and for the 10 plus years that I have freely helped this organization. And I get to do this really cool thing. I get to be a part of this really awesome thing because I took the time to serve and grow through that serving. The other thing, I think this is more important for how it benefits you, is the relationships it can create to serve. I have so many friends from Geeks Under Grace and the other ministries that I volunteered as well. That means so much to me. I'm thinking of names right now. I don't know if I should throw them out there, but there's so many. I'm not going to because I don't want anyone to feel left out. And we have 60 volunteers right now. And I love all of them so much. And some of them I talk to literally on a daily basis, and I wouldn't be talking to them on a daily basis, or wouldn't have met them at least, if it wasn't for the fact that Geeks Under Grace was a thing. If I hadn't served at Geeks Under Grace, then I wouldn't get to be a part of any of this. I'm thinking about church too, going back to the skills. I learned a bunch of computer stuff through doing the tech booth. I learned how to talk to people a little bit better by hosting. And then the people at church that I've met. If you go to a large church, I've said this for so long, if you go to a large church and you don't feel like you're a part of it yet, and that can happen. I go to a really big church as well, and their fix for it is small groups, and small groups are great. I don't want to bash small groups by any means. I think they are amazing. But they made me feel like I was part of a friend group. They didn't make me feel like I was a part of the church. Do you want to feel like you're a part of the church? Volunteer. It doesn't matter what you do. You can host, you can do tech booth, you can do the children's ministry. There's so many things that you can do to be a part of the church, and you will meet so many important people through that. Important to you, I should say. Important people to you. Meaningful relationships are created when you serve, because you're making an impact. The second point that I want to make is that serving serves others, which is kind of a moot point. I get that. But serving does serve others. And we're called as Christians to make the world a little bit better. It's a mandate. It's what we should be doing. And so I'm trying to figure out how to articulate just how much of an impact you can make by serving. And I don't necessarily mean in a church. You can serve anywhere. But there's two things I wanted to say to this. First one is the ripple effect. I guess these are both effects. I didn't realize that. And the ripple effect is that you have a pond, metaphorically, and you throw a boulder to that pond, it will create a single wave. A single wave, cool, the impact was made. If you have 100 pebbles and you keep throwing pebbles into the water over and over and over, it creates ripple effects throughout the entire pond continuously. It's having just as much of an effect as that giant boulder does, if not more. Sometimes small deeds are what change the world. You may not feel like you're the Pharaoh in the story, but you could be Joseph. You could be even Joseph's second hand. They never mention who that would be, but I know that Joseph probably had somebody that was helping him. And Joseph probably couldn't have gotten where he was if he didn't have somebody helping him. And that person probably didn't have someone, wouldn't do anything if someone wasn't helping him. You may not feel like you could make a huge impact. And if that's you, I want to tell you that everything you do impacts this world, including inaction. And that brings me to my second part for serves others. The Samaritan effect. Samaritan effect is a really crazy thing. It was, I can't remember when it was discovered, but the Samaritan effect is the idea that if someone, say you have a park and someone is having a heart attack, if there's one other person in that park, that person will call for help. They're having a heart attack. Why would you not call for help? You're walking by. You're the only one there. Of course you're going to do something. But if a person's having a heart attack at a park and there are 1,000 people there, that person is less likely to get help because everyone else thinks that someone else will do it. And no one is doing it because everyone else thinks that everyone else is already doing it. It's a sad thing. I see that in my day job all the time. That's just, people will see that, like, someone will get that. Someone will do that. And nobody actually gets anything done because they figure someone else will. The church is really bad about the Samaritan effect. I think it's something that we as a body could level up on. We could really benefit if we all thought, no one else is going to do it, I will. Be that person. Change the world around you because nobody else is going to if you don't. And you might be the person that God is placing in that situation to make that change that you want to see. My final point is serving serves God. Going back to that Genesis 45, it says, "It was not you who sent me there, but God." God has given us the opportunity to serve, and I want to make that so abundantly clear. I think that's so important for us as Christians to realize, is that God doesn't need us to serve. God doesn't need us to go out and do anything for anybody. God is all powerful. He can do that all on his own if he needed to, if he wanted to. He's giving us an opportunity to go out and do things for people. He's giving us an opportunity to be the hands and feet, to be the church. God allows us to be a part of his story. So when you decide that you're not going to do anything, you're going to decide inaction over taking action, know that you're losing out on the opportunity that God has given you. You gotta remember that God doesn't need us. We need him. If you want to get closer to God, if you want to feel closer to God, be his hands and feet. When we serve others, it reflects the character of God and it glorifies him. And I think as Christians, and that's what we're trying to do, we're trying to glorify Jesus. We're trying to worship our God. And serving is a form of worship. Serving is a worship to him. Just as much as singing praises or anything like that. It's a way that we can get closer to our Lord, to our God that we love so much, who loves us so much. Be a part of his story. So, I think the question then to end is, where do we start? Say, you may be listening to this video and going, I've never served in church before. I don't know how comfortable I am with, signing something up right now. That seems a little weird. If you can sign up to voluntary church and you're not already, definitely do so. It was probably one of the most important things I've done to level up my faith. I felt so much more a part of the church when I went ahead and signed up to serve in church. Say you're not a Christian, totally fine. Some people watching may not be. Go to a local community service event or a shelter or something and volunteer there. It doesn't have to be at church volunteering. In fact, probably shouldn't just be once a week. It should probably be throughout the week, correct? You just sign up to serve in some way, and it's going to level up your entire life. And then baby steps. That all sounds like too much. You ask the elderly person at your grocery store if you can carry the groceries out to their car. Start holding the door open for people as they're walking in. It's such a small thing, but something that's kind of forgotten these days. Go to a local convention, go to a booth, and ask them if you can help them in any way. Maybe it's just getting them some lunch, or watching the booth for a minute, or helping them set up, tear down. I'm trying to think of things that I've done where I was, we didn't really know the person because they may not want you to watch their booth too badly. But we've helped booths tear down that I've had no idea who they were. We just liked their stuff and we liked them and wanted to help. Just find ways to make small effects in the world and to help people. We live in a world where we all want to be player one. We all want to be on top. We all want to be the best. And when we're all trying to do that, nobody wins. Let's try being player two. I really do think that if you take a step back, you be someone's right hand, you be someone's second hand, second person, you're going to go farther than you ever would trying to put yourself on top. That's my challenge for you guys this week. Find a way to serve in some capacity. Look at ways that you can be someone's player too. Thank you so much for watching. There's so much more to the level of event coming this weekend. I'm really excited about all of it. I hope that it helps you in some way be able to level up.